Okay, everyone, this will be the last chapter in the body of Christopher Creed. Chapter 23. Okay. We tried to blow Leo's room full of shaving cream last night. That's a prank I caught wind of from some alumni who learned it at Purdue and came back this week for graduation ceremonies. Dorm pranks aren't real dramatic around here because you can get kicked out of school. But Cartwright reasoned that we're graduating in 2 days, and we all have our letters of acceptance to our colleges, so there's not much the Gestapo could do to us. Cartwright and this enormous dude, Todd Melifanti, whom we fondly called the Melephant, took his huge envelope, filled it with shaving cream, and shoved the flap under Leo's door. The idea is to jump on the envelope, which would force the shaving cream in 1,000 directions from under the door to permeate everything in Leo's room, including his tux for the graduation dinner tomorrow night, which we knew was hanging on the front of his closet. It was probably my fault, because I'm the one who relayed this prank in detail to Cartwright, though I never take credit for being the instigator in a prank, this one included. I can dream them up and design schemes. Where are you? And avoid detection, but I don't have the nerve to execute. Or maybe I just don't have the energy. That's where Cartwright comes in. He calls me the brains of the operation when I tag along behind him, yawning. Cartwright and I backed away from the envelope to make way for the Melephant. Cartwright figured Mel's extra 100 pounds from constant junk food consumption could send a more powerful blast on the unsuspecting Leo. We were standing there on either side of the envelope, and I noticed Mel's fat feet were, glued to the floor behind it. He pointed, and I realized right away what the problem was. Cartwright, the genius, had sealed the envelope. You're supposed to leave it open, so the shaving cream has an escape valve. No telling which direction the blast would travel. Mel started waving his hands like, "Don't!" But Cartwright was wound up for the kill and wasn't seeing anything. When Mel moved backward against the wall instead of forward with a jump, Cartwright jumped on the thing. The bang sounded like a cherry bomb. I closed my eyes for fear of getting hit in the face. By the time I opened my eyes, Cartwright and Mel were halfway down the hall, running backward, waving the envelope at me to haul my ass. I just stood there with my jaw dropped. Lee's front side was completely white. Mel's. From head to toe. When Leo opened the door going, "What the hell gives?" He was faced only with me and the wall, which supported a perfectly shaped white outline of an enormous fat kid. "What's up, Leo?" I said, for lack of something better. "What the hell is that noise?" Fortunately, I didn't have to answer because he was absorbed in the outline on the wall. He stuck one finger in it, put his nose and sniffed, and then he stared, the corners of his mouth widening out. "You know what?" he breathed. "I know this is crazy, but that shape looks exactly like Todd Melifanti." "How about that?" I pulled a laugh out of somewhere. I'm still not a great liar, but find I can ride out most situations by not offering any information at all. He didn't know we were pranking on him. The envelope was with Mel and Cartwright. He admired the silhouette for a few moments, then turned to me. "So what are you doing at my door? You come to hang out?" "No," I said quickly. "I've got stuff to do, but..." I kind of went through meltdown watching his face fall. I don't think anyone ever knocked on his door for any reason except to borrow something. Poor Leo, I thought. Poor Creed. "Leo, about the other day, man, I'm sorry. I don't know what got into me." He grinned in this combination of surprise and discomfort. "It's okay, man. I just figured you were wigging out about something. Had nothing to do with me. That's what I thought." "Yeah, absolutely. So you're okay now?" "I'm fine. So what was bugging you, man?" I sighed, deciding on the honesty routine. Less energy involved. "I was just reading something I wrote last year, something that I was tied up in, something that was important to me." "Yeah. Have anything to do with that guy you're looking for?" I watched him, thinking the guy had no shame. "What did you do? Click through my files while I was in class?" "No way, man. You got that website. I've seen your website. It's interesting. Way interesting." I don't know why that bowled me over. I mean, I know when you post a website, everyone and their brother can see it. I always had these thoughts that whoever looked at my website was from France or Iowa or Toronto. Since I didn't talk about my website to anyone around here except Cartwright, it seemed totally weird that people I lived with could look at it. Having read all of Creed.doc, I felt less keyed up, less concerned that Leo could ruin my life at this point. Still, I was glad we were graduating soon. I saw it on your hard drive last week when you let me use your computer. I don't know why. I just called it up later on my terminal. I nodded, polite as I could, thinking I never ever said Leo could use my computer, but he made it sound like I did. I turned to walk away, because the next question would be, did you find the guy yet? If I ever gave anyone an out loud dissertation on the weirdness of my website replies, it wasn't going to be Leo. I could feel him doing his usual stare routine on me as I left. I didn't feel like hearing Cartwright and Mel guffawing. I just went back up to my room and turned on my computer. I called up what I had written the night before. I wrote it just after I finished reading Creed.doc. The memories hadn't left me completely insane, just full of regrets, which I tried to get over by writing more. I didn't like my original final pages. I didn't have enough brain power. Back when I wrote the thing, to tell a whole lot about what came down in Steepleton after the body turned up, I wrote the new file to explain things that have happened since I came to Rothborn. I watched my screen bring up the last thing I saved, which I called Creed More. I didn't get out of mental health until Christmas, and had decided at that point not to go back to school. My parents, diplomatic sports that they are, let me finish on a home study program and signed me up for Rothborn for my senior year. I spent most of my spring writing Creed.doc, but I tagged along with Bo and Allie sometimes when they were going to the mall or to the Wawa. It was hard being around anyone, but especially them in certain ways. People whispered a lot when I was with them, but didn't recognize me quite as much when I was alone. I loved Bo and Allie, but hated the idea that people could accept a lie without question. And being with them seemed to heap that situation on my ears like an air raid. Killed that kid in the woods, just never found the body. His mom's a lawyer, so... Not everyone believed it. Alex actually came over a few times, like he wasn't sure he should have ever believed Renee, and he even apologized once. But that wasn't good enough. He seemed like a little kid all of a sudden. All immature, talking about how he hasn't gotten laid since Renee. Big deal, like he had to let me know that he wasn't a virgin anymore. He broke up with her the day after I got injured, and he couldn't get over the fact that she henceforth called him a socially inept retard. She continued to call Allie a slut, despite the fact that Renee sleeps with all her boyfriends and has a new one every 3 weeks. Allie and Bo broke up at the end of the year, but only because Allie wanted to graduate early and go to college. She wanted to go far away and settled on Boston U. Bo quit school when she did, figuring he had no reason to go anymore. He was almost 18 anyway, and he took a job at a gas station. But he's still the only person I feel like seeing when I have to go home for a holiday, and I always stop at the station. He wants to go into the Army, and I'm trying to talk him into it. Renee Bowen stuck to her story. Bo and I had played slice and dice with Creed. Long after it got out that the body found belonged to Bob Haynes, she gathered a great following at first, and I decided people love to believe evil shit about other people. The new police chief, Chief Rye, addressed the student body along with Mr. Ames, and they tried to counter Renee's story with their feeling that Chris had run away, because a body would have shown up, especially if 2 novice killer teenagers had been the culprits. A lot of people dropped it at that point, and at least dropped me from their suspect list, though it was harder to drop Bo. He reveled in it, but not me. I stayed home, stayed out of harm's way, until it was time to leave for Rothborn. I suppose I looked guiltier by having left, but screw 'em all, I figured. All I had wanted to do was help a few hurting people, Bo, Allie, and Creed himself. I didn't figure for my next trek that I'd lay myself wide open for the grand trophy of small-town scrutiny and humiliation, compliments of Renee Bowen. She added to the mess by saying her dad split from her mom because too many people were lying about him and he couldn't take the strain. Jesus and Mary. I've stayed awake wondering what people think when they spit out some enormous lie. Like, do they even stop to think, why am I saying this? Or do they just grab onto it like one of those folding deck chairs that floated off the Titanic? Is it a choice or a panic reaction to deep brain freeze? Those types of questions have probably kept me awake at night, probably more often than questions about ghosts or psychics. Which isn't to say I haven't done my pondering about all that. Ghosts, psychics, whatever is out there. Some people like to state their opinions as fact. I'm sort of the opposite. I'm afraid of believing some lie for the sake of convenience. It would be very convenient for me to say that after what happened, I absolutely do believe in ghosts. On the one hand, it makes sense that I saw one. There actually was a body in the Indian tomb that didn't belong there, and I had no way of knowing that. I was on my way home to spill my guts to my mom and would probably never have gone in there had I not seen what I saw, or what I thought I saw. There are a couple things that make me feel otherwise. A lot of mystery always surrounded the burial ground where the pine trees never grew. The fact was written off to the legend that Indian ghosts killed off the trees as a statement about the place being sacred. After I unearthed the grave and the Stockton professors came running, they discovered the cavity was in an enormous limestone slab that lies only about 5 feet under the earth there. Stockton proclaimed that no pine tree could take root there because when the roots got deep enough to hit the slab, they would die from self-strangulation. Limestone, not ghosts. With that part of it solved, I had to take another look at what happened to me. Mysterious as it seemed, a possible ghost gets some of the life sucked out of it when its brother mystery proves to be nothing more than 5 feet of legend covering science. And this is the tough part. Believing I saw a ghost would be a lot more convenient than believing I might have the type of mind that could hallucinate under extreme provocation. I think that's where most people would fall off. I haven't yet. It's tough, but I'm generally not swearing to any ghosts. Not unless I'm in an emotional mood. Then there's the psychic who told me I would find the body. And what do I believe about psychics? The fact that the psychic nailed certain things but screwed up whose body it was seems to work more against her than for her. That's a pretty major part to screw up. However, Dr. Faddy pointed out, for the sake of diplomacy, that the psychic never actually said she saw Creed. One thing I remember about her speech was an implication that the dead want to be seen now. And that seems like another miss. There's no possible reason why Bob Haynes would want to be seen. The fact that he crawled into a grave to kill himself indicates that that's where he wanted to stay. After the discovery, my mom tried to contact Digger Haynes to tell him. His former law office told my mother he had died in Detroit, a victim of a drive-by shooting, one of his former clients who had gotten a bad verdict. It was something else I didn't need to hear. Another gory death, and it meant that finding Bob Haynes wouldn't even mean anything to Digger. Maybe it did something good for the Lenaupes, who some ghost lovers might say did not share Bob's feeling about additions to their graves being welcome. But that gets back into whether I believe in ghosts killing off pine trees and all that stuff. I don't take truth from circular arguments, and I have no opinion about psychics. I've wished I could have talked to Digger Haynes at least once. I would have liked to ask him what he had hoped to find when he left Steepleton. I'm sure it was some sort of search for the truth based on my mother's comments about him. I wondered if he found it stifling to live in a place where people didn't really care what a truth was. Here's the mother of all lies. After the autopsy, Mrs. Creed got back on her soapbox about Chris being dead in the woods somewhere. A few days later, Justin Creed paid a visit to the principal of his middle school. The principal picked up the phone and dialed the new chief of police before Justin even had a chance to spew the whole thing. Justin told them that the night before Chris disappeared, Chris and his mom had had an argument. It was over his privileges, or the lack of any. Mrs. Creed was saying she would decide what privileges her children had, And that was the end of the story. Justin swore that he heard Chris threatening to send a derogatory email about her to Mr. Ames the following day. Mrs. Creed solved that by removing all the cables to Chris's computer system. While she was disassembling, Chris read calmly over her shoulder the letter he planned to send. Justin said from what he heard, it sounded exactly like the email that Mr. Ames had received from Chris, the one sent from the library. Mrs. Creed had blown a lot of shit around, that Chris could not have written that letter, and yet there's the truth. Chris read the thing to her before he ever disappeared, and before the cops ever got it and showed it to her. The horror is that I was in mental health, and Mrs. Creed was still cooking dinners, chauffeuring kids to and from school, and making speeches in church. I've come to think that she wasn't going to any great effort to cover up the letter when she gave her little "why would my son run away" spiel that Sunday. Maybe as far as she was concerned, she had never heard the letter. It didn't exist. There is justice in an insanely cruel world, despite the 2s and 3s I started getting after that night I discovered Bob Haynes. I got one surefire ace. My 4th week in mental health, lyrics started passing through my head. First, it happened in small breezes, then in waves, and tunes would roll right in underneath them. I'd spent years agonizing to make up even dumb songs, and all of a sudden, all I had to do was pick up a pen and kick back. Some were morbid. 2 torn aces on a stone. 2 torn aces burned to stone. 2 young men at the mill wheel grinding. One left standing and the other went flying. Gone, gone, gone in the morning. So I'm not Eric Clapton, but it's a step up from A Song to the Blues. Some lyrics got insanely hopeful. On a mountain somewhere over there, broken bones grow straight like arrows. Broken hearts unfold to care. I am strong. I'm an answer to a prayer. I am hope. I'm a fountain. I am someone over there. Considering I didn't drop any acid to get my lyrics, I'm okay with them. I'm very grateful, and I feel like I owe something to Creed. And I don't play my songs for anybody. They're private. And I can't find Creed to give him a tape. Nobody in Steepleton has ever found so much as a hair from his head. It gets me with almost a crushing sadness sometimes, because to me, he has become a hero and a legend. He was an innocent kid, a victim, and I still have the same feeling I had when I first saw my name in his note, like I could have shared some part of myself with him, whatever part he was thinking of when he saw fit to put my name in his email. So I feel like there's a part of me rotting on the vine sometimes, no matter how many songs I write and what other things I do. I did get obsessed for a while with finding things to do. I was watching TV one night when I was still in the psychiatric hospital. I saw a documentary on these guys in Belfast who refused to cut their hair until some IRA guy got released from prison. And there were IRA sympathizers walking around all over Belfast with hair to their asses. I liked that story and decided I would not cut my hair until someone turned up information on Creed. By the start of senior year, I had a ponytail about 6 inches long. And fortunately, they don't care much about hair length at Rothborn. I never told anyone in Steepleton why I was doing it, except Allie, because I was afraid some Renee Bowen sympathizer would accuse me of trying to prove my innocence. My dad promised me a Dodge Durango for graduation if I did cut it. I refused on that count too, but eventually decided that hair was a non-functional protest and I could probably find other ways to help my own cause. The functional thing, which I've kept up until this day, is trying to find Creed through the internet. I got the idea last summer, the last time I saw Dr. Fadi. He mentioned Chris's love of the internet. His very last words to the town were via email. You should try to find him and send him your story, Dr. Fadi suggested. Dr. Fadi had known me for a number of months at that point, and he knew I had not been part of any murder. And he also agreed with my stance that Creed was probably alive. I'd returned to the same conclusion I had reached that night. I stood on top of the 3 stones before the one fell over on me. I had walked in Creed's shoes that night. The week previously, I had walked in little Greg's shoes. I had walked in Lyle Corsica's shoes, Allie's shoes. I still feel like I can walk in other people's shoes. And as for Creed, I decided that maybe he had died in the figurative sense. Maybe the psychic was right when she related him to the death in the woods. Maybe I found death when I found that stupid treasure map, which stood as some sort of symbolic memorial to him. Maybe just after he sent his goodbye email to Mr. Ames, he visited the woods and there made the decision that Chris Creed, or at least those parts of himself that he wrote that he hated, would die. The email he sent, I wish that I was born somebody else. I am convinced he actually left Steepleton, and his intention was to become somebody else. Not just anybody else, but a person with traits he admired in each of the people he mentioned in his note. I don't know what all those traits are, but I know who those people are. And since I feel like I connected so well with Creed that night on the rocks, I'm banking on my own intuition. I found a website that you can join for a monthly fee, and it will look up any name you submit and send you the email address that correspond with that name. Email addresses. I've looked up Tori Arrington, I tried Alex Healy, I tried Mike Adams. There were 10 names in Creed's email, and there's 100 ways to mix them up before you start spelling them funky and stuff like that. It's like pulling needles out of a haystack. But I still send out 1 or 2 copies of the story a week. I'll post a name combination like that out of my hat, check that name search website, and send the story to any email address that corresponds with the name I dug up. I have gotten a lot of replies. None of the signees ever claims to be Creed or to know Creed. It amazes me that some people actually read through the whole thing. I keep up my hope, though some weeks it feels like a habit. I do get my up weeks. Then, if I'm not convinced I'll ever find him, I am convinced that the search is fun. During those weeks, I'll even post some awards to my website, which I call In Search of Christopher Creed. I even scanned in his picture from the freshman high school yearbook with mine alongside it. Here are some of my awards. 1. Most flattering reply to my story about Chris Creed. Dear Tori, your writing is very sensuous and tenderly glazed with the passion of ocean breezes. If I had a candle and you, I would dance naked to Titanic while you read passages of this poetic journal from sweet youth to robust manhood. Open your sweet arms to me, my poet. Love, Tori J. Healy. J stands for Jane. 2. Most insulting reply to my story about Chris Creed. Dear Mr. Adams, I am not the person for whom you are searching. You are not a man yet, though you may think you are, by virtue of the fact that you actually wrote down a couple 100 pages of magnificent twaddle. The fact you failed to capture was the pain of the Creed mother and father. But being that you're just a boy, you could not understand the agony of parents who lose a child. Parents are not perfect, and perhaps when you mature, you will rewrite your piece to the effect that you understand the Creed family's grief. I, too, come from a poor background. I, too, was in the military. The military provided the first secure situation in my life. I, too, raised my children with structure and discipline in the spirit of the military. My children are very well adjusted and don't wear long hair, unlike you. Signed, Alex Healy. 3. Reply most likely to be from Chris Creed in disguise. Dear Tori, while your story fares somewhat intriguing, you have split over 200 verbs from their modifiers and started as many sentences with a preposition. Use your spell checker and or stick to songwriting. Michael, Alex, Adams. Number 4, reply that makes me believe totally that Creed is alive. Dear Tori, I must say you have not only chronicled a very honest account of an extremely painful issue, but you have painted the details in such a way that I could not resist scrolling down, and I was utterly swept into the circumstances. I wish I could say I am the person for whom you search, but I can say that I, well, not being a writer, am a great lover of mysteries. Also, I am studying to be a psychotherapist, and with this combination of analytical learning and love of the genre, I will take the liberty of making comment and perhaps helping you out on your search. Your idea about Christopher Creed lying to himself about his life as a means to survive was very insightful. While seemingly very bizarre behavior, it actually prevents a child from having to cope with hopeless situations until such a time when he is old enough or wise enough to cope. Perhaps as your story makes its way around the world of the internet, other youths will be touched by Chris. And when they cross paths with the child in school who seems different, who seems obnoxious and intolerable, perhaps they will remember Chris Creed and they will find their tolerance, their compassion. You mentioned, but did not circle back to, your thought when you stood for the first time outside the school corridor with Ellie McDermott and the two of you were discussing Chris Creed. You said, you're making it sound like it's more dangerous to have a slightly weird family than a totally weird family. Let me close upon that for you. While radically negative families can obviously cause more overt trauma, a slightly weird family can have more lasting effects over a lifetime, effects that are harder to untangle because of their subtleties. A mother who beats her child can cause damage, but a mother who waltzes into her son's room while he's changing or chronically roots through his clothing can cause just as much damage. The difference is that it's much harder to prove this to the patient. Enough said for psychology. I want to comment now on 2 points you failed to notice about your own story that may eventually lead you to Creed. I see very obviously that he is alive. You walk in people's shoes fairly well, Mr. Adams, but you're not as insightful with clues. First, you never gave any credence to the treasure map found in the burial ground. Alex was very focused on Chris's choice of words, such as, I would venture to say, and suffice it to say, and with Chris's seemingly inappropriate preservation of the map via lamination. Perhaps had it not blown away from you so mysteriously, I don't even want to touch on your supernatural elements, for I'm not sure I believe. You would have had the visual aid to remind you later that the map is crucial. Chris told Alex he had buried treasure there. The main thrust of his mother becoming convinced he hadn't run off was that none of the money in his bank account had been touched. Perhaps there was a treasure. Perhaps it was replaced by the map from its many-year hiding place. And perhaps that treasure funded Chris's trip to places unknown. Perhaps it was nothing more than a $100 bill or some lost billfold. But now where did he go? He was a sheltered boy and not capable of much on his own. You failed to notice the importance of Allie's statement to you concerning Mrs. Creed's family. The two of you were spying from her bedroom and Allie said to you, Mrs. Creed's two sisters hate her so much they haven't spoken in years. If he turns up dead, she'll probably call them, but not before. Perhaps if these women understood their sister's insanity so well, they would have sympathized with the boy. Perhaps he contacted them in another state, perhaps via the internet. Perhaps their sympathy led them to agree to hide him, finish raising him. The fact that they were all once boons means his life would have been harder with them in some ways. But because of the strain under which he appeared to exist, I would say he probably would have found a life with them very accommodating. However, I don't really think that tidbit will help you locate him tomorrow. I venture to say that the relatives are sworn to secrecy. You can hunt them down if you wish, but my feeling is that they will not talk until the young man gives the word. And psychologically speaking, once again, I don't think that time is yet. I'd venture to say that Chris Creed does not want to be exposed for fear of his parents. I'd venture to say that you should not bother him with urgings to come forth until he is quite possibly 25. I would venture to say that while your earnest desire to uncover him is admirable, he wishes to remain undiscovered for the time being. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for sharing your name, Victor Adams. Yours most truly, Victor Adams. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. The body of Christopher Creed.